Well, a push now on Capitol Hill to better protect members of Congress following the Tucson shootings. Some lawmakers are suggesting we need new laws and regulations to ramp up security. Congressman Pete King, a Republican of New York, wants to make it a crime to carry a gun within 1,000 feet of elected officials. Congressman Robert Brady of Pennsylvania wants to ban language or symbols that suggest a possible threat or violence against federal employees. And Congresswoman Louise Slaughter of New York, a Democrat, wants the police to crack down, or she wants to police, I should say, the political language being used on the airwaves. Is this necessary? Jonah Goldberg is a Fox News contributor and editor-at-large of the National Review Online, and Nancy Skinner is a syndicated radio talk show host. All right, panel, so we're seeing it from both sides of the aisles. Got to crack down on the guns, got to crack down on the language that people are using, you got to crack down on the ability to get near a federal official if you have a firearm on you, and now some are even talking about building a plastic pen around the House of Congress, much as you'd see in an NHL game, so that people can't throw things down upon the lawmakers, which to my knowledge has not been a problem, and yet they're a little, understandably skittish right now. Nancy, does any of it make sense to you?
Well, because it's such a shocking tragedy, everybody is looking at what we can do to prevent it. But it brings up interesting questions constitutionally. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and the 14th. Because we're talking about, cracking down on speech. Very hard to do. I mean, and I'm a big free speech advocate. So I think that it is the role of the media to police speech that gets incendiary. I really do. I don't think it's the role of the government. The Second Amendment, cracking down on these magazines, these clips, these assault weapons. We have 9,500 murders, Megan, in America. This tragedy that happened, and it was tragic, is so high profile because of the victims. But I'm in Detroit, so how can Peter King say that we should just protect and allow no concealed weapons around 1,000 feet of elected officials because they're a special class of Americans? They're not. You know what? The 14th Amendment says there's equal protection of the laws. So I don't really believe you should. I believe in the Second Amendment that you should have the right to protect yourself, but I don't think that means you should be able to carry a bazooka anywhere you want.
What about that, Jonah?
Because that's the piece about our rights and what happened,
let me get Jonah
what was ultimately responsible here.
What about that? The gun legislation is something that's had a push on both sides. People saying, it's not that guns kill, it's that people kill. But what about the crackdown on a weapon like this, which seems to be picking up a little bit more traction? This was a semi-automatic Glock 19. It was a 9mm handgun that he was able to reload, obviously, pretty quickly.
Yeah, look, I think there are a lot of meaningful distinctions that need to be made here. First of all, any legislation that wouldn't have actually prevented this tragedy, I think the bias has to be that it's grandstanding. Peter King's assumption here is that this guy was perfectly willing to flout laws against first-degree murder and political assassination, but somehow might have been restrained by a 1,000-foot barrier about carrying guns. Secondly, there are a lot of people out there who are trying to follow basically the Rahm Emanuel rule of never letting a crisis go to waste. And I think generally we learn, particularly if you listen to the left, we learned a lot of things after 9/11, that sometimes making legislation in a state of national panic or hysteria isn't necessarily the best idea. And maybe we need to actually calm down and think about a lot of what we're doing here. The effort to go after speech, there's this one congresswoman who wants to change the name of the job killing bill because the word killing will fuel the violent atmosphere or something. I mean, this is profoundly, sand-poundingly stupid kind of talk. Are we going to say that we can't say kill an amendment anymore? I think people need to calm down and get over their hysteria about this, and then we can talk about whether there are some laws that are justified or not.
It sounds like to me that Nancy would agree with you on this free speech argument you made, because she's an advocate of it as well. But we have a disagreement between you two when it comes to the guns. And speak to Jonah's point, Nancy, because you tell me if you thought it was a good one, though, that even if Congressman Pete King's law had been in effect about you can't get within 1,000 feet of the congressman if you have a gun, Jared Lee Loughner wasn't going to obey that.
I completely agree with that point, okay? Because he was unstable. So where we disagree is that for Jonah to say that there is no effect of all this anti-government rhetoric and that speech does not somehow mobilize unstable people to do these things.
Did it do that in this case? Do you have any evidence
nothing.
that it did that in this case, Nancy?
There's lots of cases through our history.
Did it do that in this case?
The authorities think that he was a lot of his political philosophy was anti-government. There's a lot of it was jarbled, but it was predetermined that he was going after this congresswoman. You're not stating the facts correctly, because I asked the sheriff himself, who's the one who got this all started with that accusation, do you have any facts, any evidence that would suggest that Jared Loughner was a consumer of talk radio, of television, of any of this so-called vitriol that you have a problem with, Sheriff? And he said, no, it is pure speculation on my part. He was very honest about that, Nancy. Well, you know what? It's kind of like common sense, Megyn, that this is going to happen because so much of this anti-government stuff is going to mobilize people. We can go back to Columbine.
That's fine. If you want to have that argument, you can have that argument.
Too many guns, and too much heated rhetoric.
Let me get Jonah, and then I'll go back to you, Nancy.
If you want to launch a new campaign about political rhetoric and all of that, that's fine as far as I'm concerned. But it is ghoulish, cynical, and opportunistic to use this slaughter when everybody who pays any attention to the facts knows that there's no evidence, zero evidence, linking this slaughter to the speech by Sarah Palin or anybody else. So what people are basically doing is they are ideological ambulance chasers, ghoulishly feeding off of this misery in order to score cheap political points. Everyone from Paul Krugman and Keith Olbermann on down should be deeply ashamed of what they're doing. It is disgusting. And all of these rules and new standards that people are trying to apply now would have ruled out most of the speech by Move On and all those guys under Bush.
Quickly, Nancy.
That there was no connection, there's no cause and no effect in society of our actions. That's a ridiculous proposition. That there is not cause and effect out there, and we know that. We know that there are some talk show hosts out there.
But he's saying the same thing.
Usually
Jonah's
we
saying if you want to have that debate, let's have that debate. That's fine. We can talk about that. But to link it to this case is disingenuous. That's his point. I'll give you the last word on it, Nancy.
Well, this guy had a lot of anti-government rhetoric going on, but he was unstable. So, yeah, there's some connection.
But the Communist Manifesto was also his favorite book.
He read lots of
he didn't like the government's
grammar.
And he was
mostly, he didn't like the government. He was anti-government.
That makes him a right-wing.
He didn't like George Bush either. He didn't like the Iran and Iraq war. He didn't like Afghanistan. He didn't like any of that stuff.
That has tended to be the Tea Party flavor of the day. Hate the government. Got to stop the government. That's been
their paranoid schizophrenic, and what you're doing is disgusting,
with her
Nancy.
Crosshairs.
Okay, I
gotta
go. We've gone off the rails now. We've really gone off the rails. Now we are really disconnected from the facts as we know them. But thanks both for being here, Jonah and Nancy.
Hold it right there. The Republicans lie. They want to see you dead. They'd rather make money off your dead corpse. They kind of like it when that woman has cancer and they don't have anything for her. That's how the insurance companies make money, by denying the coverage. My God, Democrats, what's wrong with you? You can't deal with these people at all.